Okay.
First item of business is the pledge of allegiance.
Flags in the back. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, proof of publication was in the Naples Daily News on March 25th, 2019. We have a quorum. Please note that Timothy Cantwell is on the phone, and I need to swear in our newest member, Lloyd Schlepp. So Lloyd, if you could stand.
I, Lloyd Schlepp, a citizen of the state of Florida, the United States of America, and being an officer of the Florida Community Development District, or recipient of public funds of such officer, do hereby solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Florida, and will faithfully, honestly, and impartially discharge the duties of office.
All right, please note that your general counsel today is Jared Earlywine. He's on the phone. You have Michael McGilligo, the finance director, who was also sitting with you the last few meetings on the phone from Special District Services, and Clark Bennett, who is your financial advisor, is also on the phone. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
I just want to make one comment about that. Jared, if you could explain why you are on the line and what's going to happen when with you and Wes.
Yeah, happy to do it, and thank you for the opportunity with you today. I'm actually sitting in today, because I think today is a special board meeting, and Wes actually has a conflict. That said, I have been sort of shadowing Wes for the past few months. We have not been, building all the 2 vehicles worth of time, but I have been shadowing him kind of behind the scenes, just trying to come up to speed on the district. Because Wes is actually going on a sabbatical effective June 1st. So I'll be taking over his position for sort of a 6-month period there, and then Wes will be back with you when he returns. But I'm looking forward to working with you all. Appreciate the opportunity, and it should be sort of a seamless transition. I'm already up to speed on basically everything that's happened in the last year or two, and ready to get to work.
Great. So just to reiterate, after June 1st, if you have any legal questions and you need to contact the CDD legal counsel, you will contact Jared. Please pronounce your last name.
Early wine, like early in the morning, and wine like the drink.
Great. Jared Earlywine. Thank you, Jared.
Sure, thank you.
Kathleen, a few more additions, eventually for the agenda. I spoke to Wes earlier this week, and it's been my custom in these types of meetings to have a legal report, and that is, as a standing report, and again, it's a suggestion, certainly I'll defer to the board's views, in which our lawyer would give us an update on any legislation pending or adopted that affects us, and any updates on any legal actions to the degree that it's appropriate for public discussions at this early stage. If nothing else, it keeps the board apprised on what's going on in the legal world. So that was one suggestion I had. And it can be a short, if there's no report, there's no report. But at least we get the benefit of an update from our lawyer.
All right, we can add another administrative.
That's fine. That's fine. As long as it's a standing report, if it's not listed, we tend to not look for it or pay attention to it. But that's fine. I'm fine. Similarly,
Hello. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Did you have something, Jared?
Oh, no, I did not. What was being said? Oh, sorry.
and then whether it's under administrative matters or somewhere else today, can we speak generally about the scope of the CDD's responsibilities, i.e. shoreline, preserve, whatever. I think as a new board, while we review the documents that have been provided to us, I'm not sure I have a full understanding of our obligations to budget, oversee, and administer. So someone can give us that, or maybe as a future agenda item, but I just want to have a clear understanding for the new board members, for the public, what our obligations are.
I suggest we get a future board presentation, so it's actually a presentation.
Yeah, just to follow up, I think Kathleen's exactly right. What I've seen is other districts, they'll either do something as simple as sort of having a farming map, maintenance map put together with sort of an explanation what the services are, and kind of post that on your website. Or you can go all the way to having sort of a CD, what we call a CD 101 presentation, which I think Kathleen's alluding to, where you have a workshop, have board come, and staff can do presentations about kind of the ins and outs of the district, and giving kind of a board, that may make some sense.
I'm fine with that. My only caution is that we're in the middle of some committee work that establishes roles, responsibilities. We're in the middle, or we're going to be beginning the thought process of budgeting, which comes up, I think, September 30th, where we have to have an adopted budget. So we have tasks ahead of us that need the foundation of an understanding of our responsibilities. So I'm fine with a future meeting if we can schedule that sooner rather than later. Thank you.
This is Tim Campbell. I have another addition to old business to the agenda.
Hold on, Tim. Do I have a consensus then?
Sure.
For the next meeting? Go ahead, Tim.
I wanted, under old business, I put on my agenda number 3, the status of our annual engineering report. It's my understanding we haven't had one since, I think it's dated May 3rd, 2018 or something like that. 17. So we haven't had an engineering report in 2 years.
Consensus to add after administrative matters?
Okay?
Anything else?
Tim, can I ask you a question? Just to follow up on your question, are you asking for sort of a monthly report from the engineer? It sounds like you're asking for just like a public facilities report, or if there's something on the agenda for you to do it on an annual basis. Kathleen, I don't know if you know exactly which report you've been providing for historical.
I know what he's talking about. Josh, let me answer your question.
Got it, okay, thanks.
Okay, at this time, are there any comments from the public for items not on the agenda? If you have a comment, make sure you state your name for the record. All right, seeing none. Approval of minutes of March 19th, regular board meeting minutes. Are there any additions, deletions? If not, I need a motion.
I have, this is Tim, I have 2 things that were in my notes. Let me pull the minutes up on my computer here. Let's see, I think it's on page 7 of the book. Well, let me start at page 4. George he'll probably point this out. We seem to be interchanging the words construction monitor with construction manager. And I want to make sure that we're consistently referring to one and the same subject. So let's pick a word that's the proper word and stick with that so that we understand that we're on the same subject. That's on page 4 at the bottom. On page, I'm sorry, it's page 4 in a minute. So let's see, page 6 of the book, which would be page 4 at the top. We were referring to Mr. Omlin asked if the future version of the checklist, if Mr. Evans could list the items occurred and the dates. On down, we're talking about FEMA funding, and there were a couple of points on the FEMA funding. Josh stated that he would have the FEMA, quote, large project, end quote, final FEMA review done by the next CDD board meeting. That was not reflected in the minutes. Also in the minutes that were not reflected, Mr. Omlin recommended that one officer be assigned to oversee the activities related to FEMA claims process so that we can assure that the process continues after Mr. Evans' departure. I didn't find that.
It's because it's not.
It's Michael here. I believe we actually started that later. We did that, I don't know if you remember, but at the time Mr. Almond was requesting that, the idea was that the new board member was going to be the appropriate person for that, but since we hadn't actually put him on the board yet, we decided to hold that off until later in the meeting after we appointed the new board member, and then we assigned him that task.
Tim,
Okay, I just didn't want it.
Tim, see paragraph 6 on page 6. A motion was made by Almond with a second by Cantwell to appoint Mr. Schleip as a board representative to FEMA matters.
I see, okay.
Tim, to clarify, the part that I said would be complete by this week would be the PDMG, which is the project manager review with FEMA, and then it would get moved to final FEMA review.
Okay. Tim, Jared, I don't know if you had any other changes. I had one I wanted to mention, but which for you have more to do. That's all I have. Catherine, I had one change. I think it's also on page 4, which is sort of section 3 update regarding status requiring a construction litigation firm. I think Wes made a recommendation for one of the 3 law firms. And I think the Chilton had located numbers through other sources. So I think that person there's a little off in that regard.
That's correct.
Any others? I just have one. Section I.7, the word contact should be contracts. It's the construction manager and quality manager. That's it.
I move we approve the minutes as corrected.
Aye.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thanks.
Status of contractor negotiations, Mayor.
And Dan, did you want to provide the update on this one? I have some of the information. I know that you sort of been meeting with the contractors. We did get a phone call from Mike Conte, your new litigation counsel, who's really fun to talk to, which is coming up to speed. I think our office as well as staff will provide him with various documents. And I believe that he's also sent out notices to various parties and issues. So I think he's coming up to speed, but I think Sandy probably has the last conversation with the contractors themselves.
Yes. Since the last meeting, I've been in contact with all 4 parties that were involved in Phase 1. That is Metro, BG Mine, Evans Engineering, and Velocity Engineering. Those phone calls, emails, followed the letters that were sent by Jared's office. We've retained litigation counsel, keeping them on a short leash so we don't spend a lot of money. They've also sent letters to each of the parties. Since the last meeting, I've met with Metro on 3 different occasions, pointing out to them their contractual obligations, the shortfalls in the Phase 1 results, which was identified in the ECS report. Their view is that the fine print of their contract does implicate them. However, they believe that there's a contributory negligence claim for all the parties. So they've offered an amount which I would not recommend to the board for approval. That dialogue is still ongoing. I've met with Evans Engineering. We've begun a dialogue about damages, contributory negligence, about settlement. That has not yet concluded. I've reached out to Velocity, had a conversation with them. They have declined to speak to me for 3 weeks until they can get direction from their lawyers on the framework of a settlement meeting. I spoke to them again on Friday. They've now gotten released to meet, and we are going to schedule a time to get together and talk about their participation in a settlement. The BG mine, which appears to be more singularly responsible for the Phase 1 results, since they supplied the rock that was purchased by the quarry as 12-inch to 24-inch, yet we got far less in size rock supplied to us, has been very difficult. I've called there 3 different times, left messages, not gotten a response. Litigation counsel Traficante has looked them up in the state's register and found the registered agent for the BG mine, because it's an individual owner not located at the mine, but an investor up in Bonita. That person has been non-responsive. I'm not sure how much more we will pursue this informally, and may need to take the mine to task in a more legal fashion. I wanted to report to the board today, get some sense of direction from the board, report back to litigation counsel Traficante. He suggested that an option that we may take, which is still low cost with perhaps more benefit than informal sit-down negotiations, which are really informal and don't force anybody to the table. He's suggesting that we do pre-trial mediation, which brings all the parties and the quarry into a room, sit with each of them, talk about the results, send everybody to an individual conference room, and have the mediator go into each room with those parties and say, what are your thoughts, what are your views, what's your limits, and so forth. That's oftentimes looked at as a prerequisite for a judge in terms of a trial, so it's something that we might need to do eventually anyway, so why not get that started? Low cost, relatively easy to coordinate, but for the scheduling of all parties in one sitting. So that's probably the essence of my report to the board on the settlement discussions. And I welcome any questions or comments or thoughts on the next step. If nothing happens in a week with BG Mine and or Metro, my inclination would be to suggest that we pursue the pre-trial mediation, which brings everybody to the table in a formal, less formal, but obligatory obligation for them to come to the table. So, again, I welcome any questions.
Do you and Jerry have any information on the surety bond carrier? Have they given a response?
On what?
The surety bond?
Yes, I'm sorry. I should have reported that. We still have an outstanding performance bond that's valid. They've been noticed. They are on hold in terms of pursuing a response while negotiations are underway. So we are protected. By the way, litigation counsel as well as Jer and Wes have, I believe, gone through the contract documents pretty thoroughly. Litigation counsel has asked me 1,000 questions, asking for 1,000 documents so that he can be sure that we haven't lost any timetables. As you may know, contracts have a lot of performance standards that if you don't notice within 30 days or if you don't notice within 10 days, that your rights may be lost. So we've gone through that exercise to make sure that we're okay in terms of all of our timetables. So the performance guarantee is still out there, we're protected, they're on hold, and that will be another option for us to pursue. So I welcome further questions or your thoughts on whether we should wait a week, see how things go, thereafter pursue pre-trial mediation would be my recommendation.
I personally agree with that recommendation. We tried the informal route. The next logical step would be the least cost legal route, which we've explained is mediation. It sounds like the correct response, and it obviously will be more formal from the standpoint of counsel for all parties to be involved. I agree with that. Anybody else?
I also agree with Stan's recommendation. As part of that motion, Stan, I'm assuming, based on our prior authorizations in the last meeting, that you would actually be the person attending on the district's behalf, obviously with Mike, and then any final settlement would be brought back to the board for a final decision. I just want to make that part of the motion if that's acceptable to you.
That would be my understanding, yes.
All right, what I need is someone to make a motion that formally moving into mediation and stand as your representative. Second? Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Those opposed, motion carries. All right, moving on, we have next item is discussion on the construction oversight contracts. Jerry, you can go over those. I know that the attorney sent them out to you.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to discuss it. So, on the construction oversight contract, these are the items previously bid by the board for two requests for qualification processes to provide a background, as you'll know. One was for quality assurance, and the other was for construction manager services. And our call reviewed one proposal for each of those. I think ETS pulled up with the response to the quality assurance manager, and then we got some of those from Capital Consulting Solutions in connection with the construction manager. And each of these proposals, I think, are being negotiated, and I think Lloyd has actually stepped in and helped enhance some of these discussions with the contractors. As I recall, we had authorized some negotiations on each of the contracts, and that's really the process that we're in right now under the request for qualifications, right? You bring some sort of responses and then negotiate with more contracts. Well, the proposals that we've got back and are pretty disparate, which one you look at. Quality assurance, I think they came in, they've got one of the prices was around $28,000, kind of what they're proposing in terms of services. And then capital construction, capital consultant came up with a construction manager proposal around $92,000. We can obviously continue to negotiate with each of these firms if you'd like to. If you're comfortable with one proposal, you could have the board approve that, subject to staff and appropriate formal agreement. If you're not inclined to continue on with the discussion, negotiations with these firms, then with respect to that particular RFQ, you could say or terminate the negotiations and reject all bids, and then we can see what we want to do next about that particular service. Do you have any questions on what I've described so far? No, I have a comment. This is Tim speaking. I took a look, since we're all new here, I went through last year's minutes, and it appears based on a change order number 1 for consulting services on phase 1 construction, dated April 26th from J.R. Evans and signed by Kathleen Bailey. It looks like we paid for construction management and materials testing a total of $212,000. I just wanted to put it in perspective, what these things cost. Construction management was $75,000, was part of it. There are other fees, they're not fully itemized, but I wanted to make sure that those who have a more accurate historical perspective put into perspective these costs that have been presented. I thought that the capital number was quite high, but we have to look at what we are receiving in return for these services and what we really need.
Yes, you're correct, Wes. Jerry, it was actually Wes and myself that have been involved in the analyses of the two quotations, one for the construction manager and one for the quality manager. And what we found is, yes, indeed, the capital engineering quote is extremely high, mainly because our estimate for construction management services was actually pretty much right on. However, they loaded up with a tremendous amount of overhead, a lot of unnecessary engineering services, as well as a lot of unnecessary other activities that ballooned the construction management portion from about $95,000, and mind you, we estimated $100,000, to the $190,000 that was mentioned. So, in my opinion, there's a lot of unnecessary cost that was added on. Not sure why they did it, but they did it. So that's the status of that construction manager quotation from Capital Services. As far as the quality manager, ECS, I think it was Jerry mentioned, gave a quote of approximately $30,000. And they were just the opposite from the standpoint, I'm not sure if they completely understood the scope of work. They are low, and we intend to have a discussion, because that was received last week, with them to make sure they fully understand the scope, and in the actuality, their cost is probably going to go up. The one thing I want to point out that is extremely important, you'll hear me talk a little later about the projects that we have to undertake, and it's important for us to get a high-quality project at the lowest possible cost. I mean, right, that's what we all want. I'm going to do a little preamble here. I was invited by Ms. Laura Severance to attend the Heritage Bay Umbrella Association meeting. And at that meeting, the Heritage Bay CDD gave a presentation on their riprap project. And basically, as bad as our project went, that's how good their project went. Exceptionally well. And when you analyze their project, it became apparently clear to me as a project manager what had happened. Number one, they had a management company that was responsible for maintenance and capital projects that oversaw, so that's one level of oversight. Secondly, they had quality engineering perform the project, and quality, if you read their quotation, has an excellent background in project management as well as construction. So they had a tremendous team in place to watch the project. Third, they had an engineer of record that was not only familiar with quality engineering, but also was very strong. And fourth, they had CDD involvement that was very, very high and detailed. So the CDD kept on that. So really 4 levels of management in varying degrees of detail that kept track of their project. Now, why do I mention this? Well, it's important to understand that what we're actually asking for here is more than that. And I think, based on the pricing that we've seen from Capital for construction management, and conversely, the pricing we've seen from Quality, and from my discussions with Quality and review of their background and history, it really comes into question if we need 5 levels to manage our project, when Heritage Bay, in reality, had only 4 levels managing there. So, my point is we need to really consider whether we need 5 levels and if 4 levels will be sufficient. The 4 levels here would be the engineering expertise we have on the CDD. Myself, Stan, Lloyd. Number 1, that would be level 1. Level 2, an engineer of record. We're in the process of hiring a new engineer of record now, and I believe we have obtained quotas of this morning for their due tomorrow. So we are pursuing strong candidates for engineer of record. Number 3, obviously, if we would go with quality, we would have our 4th level with the contractor themselves, and finally, that's a 3rd level, and the 4th level would be an outside independent company like ECS to do quality management, and maybe even a little bit of project management checking as well. So we would have the 4 levels that essentially Heritage Bay had overseeing our project. And with the level of success that they had, I would hope we would have the same level of success with them. Yes?
George, this is Tim speaking. I'll just add that I have indicated
100%.
If I could jump in here, this is Lloyd. And also, for those of you, I do not have a projecting voice, so even though I'm using a microphone, if you are unable to hear me, please raise your hand. So, but we have the cart a little bit ahead of the horse here, just on the agenda item, and George has just alluded to that. The selection of the contractor really is primary to where we go then with the management. And I met Friday. If I could, I'm going to give you a quick meeting minutes that I took myself. I've also had Lou take a look at these to verify that they were fairly accurate. And we had began on Friday negotiations for the second phase. And I think after you hear what I have to say, it'll make sense as to the direction that we take with our management of the project. So, we did meet on Friday afternoon, late afternoon. The bulk of this was with Josh Evans at his office in Lou, did I pronounce it right? Gaudio, from Quality. The bulk of our meeting we spent reviewing the RFP, the plans, the drawings, and the specifications, which with QE taking a close look at that to ensure that all of the requirements we are asking for are included in their proposal. And a couple of small things popped out, but for the most part, everything was covered. Those small things Josh and Lou are going to attend to here shortly to better define a couple of the things and make sure that there's no issues with those being included. We discussed the importance of the project completion by 11/1 or earlier. And this is critical because that is our FEMA date for reimbursement. We asked Quality to look at a couple of the line items that we did not think were properly priced in their proposal, and I've already had some feedback from Lou that there probably can be some changes on one or more of those items. And we appealed to them for just a general price relief where possible, because no one from the quarry, starting with this board, is happy with the amount of money we need to spend. And I'm happy to say that QE expressed their willingness to work with us on all of the